Everybody, welcome into the Loretta McNary Show, and yes, I'm on location at the beautiful Stax Museum here in Memphis, Tennessee. You know, everyone knows about Stax Museum, but we're here for a very special reason. We have an amazing HBO director. Her film Mavis, with an exclamation point, is being screened here in Memphis and all over the country and will air on HBO. Everybody welcome Jessica Edwards to the show.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm great.
I know you have been like running all over the country talking about Mavis and meeting Mavis and putting this documentary together. I watched it and I cried, I laughed, I became inspired. So what was your hope behind putting this documentary together?
Sure. I mean, it's everything you just said, you know. I mean, she is such this force of good and light, and she really just needed her due, you know. I mean, I feel like her and her family did so much to change American music, and you know, Stax is just one part of her very rich history. So I really wanted to set out to make the film because I was so inspired, and she brought me such joy. So I really wanted to bring that out.
And you did, because when I was watching it, I got so many amazing aha moments from this, and then I got this, and it was irony. Pop took them to hear Dr. Martin Luther King, and he was so moved by what he was saying and his personality and his message that he said, if he can preach it, and I got this from your film, if he can preach it, we can sing it. And then you go to hear Mavis perform in Brooklyn. You were so moved and said, you know what, nobody has done this documentary. Why has nobody recognized this iconic, legendary lady? And you decided to make something happen, and you created Mavis. So when people watch this, I know they're going to be moved. And I learned a lot about her that I didn't know. So what were some of the things you learned that you didn't know?
Well, I mean, I obviously, when I had been reintroduced to her, I listened to Stax. You know, my parents had records, and you know, but when I started researching, I didn't realize that she really touched on so many of these genres. You know, she was a gospel singer and you know, a touring hardcore gospel singer, one of the biggest gospel groups in the country. The thing that surprised me most about during my research period, the thing that surprised me most was how much her and her family not only touched on all these genres of music, but were very much pioneers in them. You know, when they sang folk music, they were one of the first Black artists to really do so.
I remember your film, and she said, we've never performed it. You know, only audience has been Black people, and she is so transparent and so authentic. I love that.
It's true. I mean, there wasn't a lot of mix back then, and it wasn't really until Newport and the folk scene that, you know, Black and white audiences started coming together, and they were coming together for a common cause in the civil rights movement. But pop specifically, I mean, Mavis was still very young back then, and so pop specifically was very much a leader in terms of bringing those civil rights messages into the music and into the churches. You know, the churches back then weren't as, you know, they weren't embracing Dr. King's message in the beginning. It was something that took a bit of time, and I think that the Staples singers very much act as his messengers on the ground and taking that message into the churches and really turning people to thinking about, you know, issues of the day and issues of individual rights.
And you did such a good job on, because normally when you see documentaries, there's a lot of outside people, I call it noise. These are people telling you about that person. In your film, you have Mavis.
Right.
You have her telling her story, and then these people are like co-signing on it instead of the other way around in most documentaries. So I was really fascinated by that process, because I know that took more time and more, you know, filming here, going here, getting her on her schedule. So and that's another thing that I really found this film is so different from other bio docs, because you did have the legend in the film and got her opinion.
Absolutely. I mean, we were very, very lucky that she wanted to tell her story and also trusted us to tell her story. And I think that it was a very specific choice for me at the beginning. I mean, look, there's absolutely no shortage of amazing people who would get on screen and tell you how wonderful Mavis is and what an inspiration she is. And, you know, Mary J. Blige or Beyonce or any, Adele, any of these people, but they don't have this kind of direct connection to her. And so when I started making the film, I started with a list of 100 people. It's like 100 people could be in this movie, and I just kept crossing people off because I was like, I wanted people to be who were part of her story, who could tell part of her story, and that was really important. And we just really wanted to keep coming back to her. She is the one to tell her own story.
She is the one to tell the story, but you did an amazing job on telling her story. So what were some of the challenges? Because her story is huge. It's civil rights, it's gospel music, and like you said, pioneers of these things. And then she did the folk music and, met these great people, and you had Prince and Bob Dylan. I mean, you had all these amazing people. So I know there were some things that you had to cut because we can't sit there for hours and days.
Yeah.
So was that a challenge for you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that was certainly the biggest challenge. When I first started making the film, I read Greg Kott's biography of her, and I kept reading all of these stories, and I knew that we would never be able to put everything in. And in fact, that would actually be a disservice to the film and to her if we tried to cram everything in and the film ended up being a Wikipedia entry of her life. I mean, we have the book, which is such a great resource, and we have the internet, which is also such a great resource. And so I just kept coming back to this idea that, how did she make me feel when I saw her perform? And how does she make millions and millions of people over the years really truly be moved? I mean, when you know Mavis and you've seen her live, you are a changed person. And that to me was what we wanted to capture. And so inevitably we left stuff on the cutting room floor. I mean, there's no Mahalia Jackson in this movie, which was the last thing to go. And I held on to our Mahalia Jackson scene for so long, but we couldn't make it fit, I mean, a very wise filmmaker once told me that, at a certain point in the process, you have to switch your allegiance from the footage that you have to the film. And so we just had to keep focusing on the movie.
I can only imagine, like an author, you want to just keep writing, you always come up with, I want to add this, but at some point, you have to say, that's enough. So that was your point at taking out the Mahalia at the last minute, and I know that, because her voice, and when she said she's had that voice since she was like 13, the same voice that you hear today, she had it at 13, and I can relate to that on so many levels. So when you were watching at the concert, were you there as a fan or as a film director, or did they meet somewhere in the middle?
Yeah, I mean, I think at a certain point my fan turned into a film director, and I think you don't want to be too, you need to be able to paint your subject as a really, as a three-dimensional person, and Mavis is a three-dimensional person, and so we needed to put that in the film and honor that, but at a certain point, it really is who she is.
I bring a personal hero of mine up on stage. The woman I love more than anyone in the world, other than my wife, Mavis Staples. Got myself arrested, wound me up in jail. Richmond bound to blow up, communication failed. If you see the answer, now's the time to say
Okay. The Mavis that you see on the screen is the Mavis that was in our interviews, that is backstage. You know, she doesn't, you know, she's not sort of a performer, an entertainer who's one person in the front of the stage and a different person backstage. You know, and I think that's because she started doing this very young, and I think she had the support of an amazing family around her. I mean, if you think about sort of really big musical acts who are also families, you know, like the Jackson Five, or, you know, they're often stories of, you know, torment and hardship and scandal, and the Staples Singers do not have that, you know. It's not part of, you know, wasn't part of Pop's and Osceola's like plan for the family, and that to me was the thing that popped right out, you know, that we wanted to tell this story like it was a family history.
And I think because because of their strong beliefs and their Christian background, they didn't get into, they were always remain humble. I bet that was their prayer. We just want to be humble, and we want to serve you in everything we do. And I remember, I was a little girl, and I remember the controversy of hearing people when they switched over from gospel and they switched over to what people call secular, but music is music to me. It's the words that make it either bad or good. So I remember people like, you know, how are they going to do that? Right. And then in your film, it talks about how Pop didn't want to sing the song "Do It Again," right. But he nailed it. He rocked it so well for somebody who didn't want to do it.
It's true. And I mean, I think, you know, what always struck me was that even though they switched genres, you know, and covered so many different types of music in their career, they never strayed from that message, you know.
Right. Or their faith.
You know, the gospel message was about love and peace, and the messages that they learned from Dr. King, you know, was about freedom and love and peace. And they, you know, even when they moved, you know, slightly into a more secular realm, you know, that message stayed. I mean, look, the Stax era produced definitely some of their biggest hits, you know. But Respect Yourself, that is a booty shaking song. I mean, you can get down to that, and it is a human rights song. Respect yourself. You know, you cannot get more of a message than that.
So they never sang anything that was anti what they believed in, whether it was folk or gospel or R&B or soul, and nobody could sing it like they sung it too. Right. And I didn't know that she worked with Prince until I watched her. It was so many things it was such a discovery when I was watching the film.
Oh, good.
And I didn't know she worked with Prince. I had no idea about that. I didn't know that there was a huge downtime in her career where she said, well, nobody's calling me, so I will go get money out the bank and I will do this. And that was a huge message for people to be inspired. Don't wait on the money. Don't wait on people to come to you. You have every right to go out and make this happen for yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, look, I don't think we have, as a culture, a lot of women who are older, who are African American, who are pure role models for us. I mean, she's such a role model. And to be 65 years old, you know, her father passes away, you know, she's not doing the things that she loves doing that her dad would want her to do, and so she picks herself up by her bootstrap at 65. I mean, you could very easily rest on your laurels at that time, or call it retirement, or do whatever, and she doesn't need the money. You know, it's not about the money. She truly has a calling. And so to be able to not only, you know, go back out on the road and all the grueling aspects of that, but that to really be making unique and interesting and vital and contemporary music now, when she's 76.
Amazing.
I mean, that's something to really model yourself after.
It is. And everybody, you don't have to be African American, you don't have to be female. You can get so much out of her story, her triumphs, her tribulations, and then to reinvent yourself, but still stay in the same industry. That blew my mind too. She didn't have to go out and, you know, start doing something else. She has been able to stay true to her craft, and when she performs, she leaves nothing on the stage. I promise you, she owes nothing to the stage when she performs. So I learned that from your film. So I'm an exclamation girl. Every time I post, it's exclamation, exclamation, exclamation. I text exclamation, and for you to have an exclamation point, I have to ask, why did you put the exclamation point behind Mavis?
Well, I mean, very early. I mean, you know, I'm not a fan of the sort of subtitle, like, you know, the title of the film and then like the subtitle, you know, The Life of Mavis Staples. Staples, and the movie couldn't be really, the movie named itself, you know, I mean, the kind of, you know, feeling that I wanted the film to bring to people just needed the exclamation point, and she just needs the exclamation point. And also, there's nobody out there like Mavis.
Nobody.
There just isn't. So.
No one. And I went through my list of people. I'm like, who can I compare her to? Who reminds me of her? And of course, because her voice is so big. I mean, I don't even know where she sings as tenor, bass, alto, whatever it is, she adds her own stuff to it, so nobody can duplicate it. And of course, Mahalia Jackson, and you talk about Aretha Franklin, and those people have this kind of voice that's timeless, and no matter how they age, they still have that same, you know, raspiness and same power behind their voice. And she's 76 years old and sings just like she did when she was in her 20s.
Yeah, I mean, you can't, you know, I do think she's sort of in a class all her own, and you know, I think that was part of the other reason we wanted to make the film, was to honor that.
So when you decided to create the film, what was your aspiration? Did you think big screen, or did you say, I just want to tell this story and let it flow however it flows?
So this film was truly a labor of love. My partner, the executive producer of the film, Gary Hustwood, is my partner and my baby daddy. And he and I basically started making the film ourselves. And, you know, we obviously knew that she has this huge fan base, and that, you know, even people who may not have been listening to the newer work that she did with Jeff Tweedy, or, you know, were more familiar with her sort of solo contemporary stuff, certainly knew who the Staples singers were, and certainly listened to those albums. And so we knew there was an audience there, without a question. But this was made, you know, completely self-financed, you know, on our own backs. I mean, when we came to Memphis to film, we brought our daughter, and we did a road trip through the Delta and filmed through the Delta, and, you know, drove up through to Nashville and filmed there. And so this was sort of, you know, I like to think that this was a film about a family made by a family.
Made by a family.
And,
oh, you should coin that.
Yeah.
I like that. I inspired that. So give me a little credit. That was truly her own. Truly her own.
Yeah. And then, of course, you know, when we premiered the film and HBO came on board as our broadcast partner, I mean, you couldn't, that was like, I felt like we won the great film, you know, prize.
Yeah,
you know, that
whatever that would be, you won it.
It was HBO was certainly always sort of the pie in the sky, and they're such a wonderful partner and so good to filmmakers, and so I really, really wanted them, but I could never sort of think that, so